I'd like to call this meeting back to order. And before we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to ask Student Member Halbo to broadcast our statement. Oh, where'd she go? Well, she was here a second ago. You can give it from there. Don't you have it memorized? Okay, well, then we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Nicholas Elementary School. And if you're ready, come on up. I think there's a little stool down there if they can't reach the microphone. Plus, the microphone will come down. Yeah. Don't be shy.
So nobody wants to do it in the mic? Nobody wants to do it. Okay, screw that. We'll just do it from here.
Okay.
You ready? All right. I
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stay there. I'd like to have a little presentation by member Michael Minnick.
All right. Thank you, Vice President Wu. All right. How you doing? What's going on, Falcons? All right. That was not the response I was hoping for, but all right. So as educators, we don't work alone. We rely on our families to help us build a safe and supportive community to ensure student success. We appreciate the hard work, support, and dedication of the parent group of Nicholas Elementary. And tonight, we're going to honor those parents and their students. So the students we have with us tonight are Daniela Benitez, Guillermo Reyes, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce people's names, Brisa Lopez, Adrian Perez, Michael Viejo, Anthony Zavala, Akila Price, Maya Price, and Mia Price. Awesome. They got the whole Price family. So at Nicholas Elementary, there's a diehard group of parents who attend monthly parent meetings, parent leadership academies, ESL classes. They're part of the ELAC committee and the school site council. And they're actively involved at the school site with volunteering, helping in the classroom to support teachers, attending field trips, and a lot more. So those parents with us are Milagro Benitez, Carolina Navarro, Camelia Lopez, maybe? Fair enough. Alicia Perez, and Ana Vargas. Awesome. So in addition, there are parents that all work at the school as yard supervisors, help with translation, and have been active participants in the Nicholas community for years. We have Juanita Price. There we go. See, now that's the response I was hoping for. Thank you, Juanita. Ana Vargas again. And Yadi Zavala. There we go. So one of the most recent parent-led initiatives at the Nicholas is the Nicholas Elementary Walking Group that promotes student safety. So each month, the parents and students walk to school together using safe routes and learning about pedestrian safety. Nicholas Elementary prides itself on creating a community where parents and staff work together to teach our future leaders. So tonight, we honor them.
Yeah.
Stay down there. I'm going to come down because I have some certificates for you.
And I think member Garcia would like to say something, would you? Your button's pushed.
Sorry, that was an accident.
It's only the second meeting.
Put your finger on that white blinking button
For 5 seconds.
for 5 seconds.
Get the shirt on. Nice job. Guillermo. Yes, sir. Brisa. Adrian. No? Adrian Perez? Okay. Fair enough. Who gets a shout out? Michael Viejo. Anthony Zavala. Akila Price. Maya Price. Did I say your name right? Mia Price. You got it? All right. Milagro. Hang on for a second. We're going to take a picture when we're all done. Carolina. Yeah, I'm almost done. Oh, here we go. Julia. Oh, sorry. Alicia. Alicia, no. Anna. Anita. You didn't say hey.
Oh, hey, I'm sorry.
Yadi. And we got, and these are the two that were not here, right? Adrian and Alicia, correct? Sure, absolutely. Thank you. All right, so if you guys might turn around, see that gentleman that's like a younger version of me? We're gonna smile so he can take our picture. A better looking version of me. Wait a second. Hold on here. Don't just flip it in the back. We need you up close. You're being shot. Come on, Nicholas. Cheeseburger. All good? Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys. Great work.
Thank you, Falcons. I know it takes a village, and you brought the whole village here today, so thank you very much. Next, we'll go back to agenda item 4.1, our broadcast statement. Student member Halbel.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T UVerse. Today's meeting will air Saturday, January 19th at 6 p.m. and Monday, January 21st at noon, and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. We welcome members of the audience to address the board. Please complete a speaker form located in the back of the community room and give them to our communications representative, along with any handouts you may have for the board prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will ask that you please defer your comments until your item comes up on the agenda. Please also turn off your cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate.
Thank you, student member Halbel. Item 5, announcements of action taken in closed session.
None, Mr. President Pro Tem.
Thank you, sir. Item 6, agenda adoption. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Oh, who seconded? You moved and somebody second? Who second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, public comment. Mr. Barrios, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have 9 public comments. If you could please line up to in the front as soon as you hear your name called. Lachey Brazil. Lashanya, thank you. Brett Balu, Nicky Malevsky, Alexandra Norton, Cathy Hinckley, Hong Lun Yu, Mary Yang and Crystal Lee, Phyllis Stroop, and Kenya Martinez.
Happy New Year, Lasagna.
Happy New Year, board members, superintendent. I don't see Superintendent Aguilar. I don't see Jesse Ryan.
She'll be
But
here
Happy
shortly.
New Year. Happy New Year to y'all.
Seat warm.
Huh?
I'm warming her seat.
There you go. Okay, that works. Just an update from the Black Parallel School Board. You know I'm Miss LaShanya Brazil, and I want to say Happy New Year to you all again. I would like to give you some updates on the Black Parallel School Board. First, upcoming on Tuesday, February the 19th, 2019, We are hosting our Black Parents Involvement Day. We are asking that all board members please invite their families at their schools to participate on that day. And if you do not have flyers, we'll make sure that you get those flyers. Second, the Black Parallel School Board is very concerned about the Sacramento City Unified District's financial health and deficit spending that will negatively impact students of African descent. That's a large concern we are having, given African American students' academic performance levels are the lowest of all the ethnic and racial groups who attend schools in the district. What we are urging is that the district do not use the district's budget shortfalls in a way that will balance the budget on the backs of our students of color, teachers, and staff as well. And then I will conclude by just stressing that we need to move to a 21st century multicultural education system, a high-quality, cultural, responsive, and community-based learning community. Thank you to you all, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brett Ballou. I'm not here to waste any of your time, so I'm going to get right to the point. My son's teacher is Hugo Gunan Blaney. I've had continual run-ins with this man. I've been disrespected in the matter of which he insinuated that my son's medication had worn off or that I, as a father, was not giving him enough personal attention. I have 100% and the only parent in his life. On top of all this, my son yesterday was thrown on his face and his front tooth was broken, on which I had to have, out of my own pocket, a cap put on. I fear for my son's safety. He doesn't trust his teacher, nor does he respect him. I've had so many run-ins, and as I'm going through the correct protocol dealing with Mr. Dixon, he has chastised us for any unity as the parents that come together. He is systematically trying to keep us apart for some reason that is unbeknownst to me at this problem. I am extremely frustrated with getting nowhere with this whole entire situation. At least he addresses me. Morgan's mother, who will be speaking in a moment, he absolutely ignores her. He doesn't respond to any emails, and I am extremely unhappy with the safety issues and the other stuff that has been unfortunately befallen on my son. And by no means is my son a saint. None of his bad behavior will ever be justified. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can you ask what school?
What school is your son attending?
Oh, David Lubin.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
And Mr. Brown, will you raise your hand, please? Oh, you're not Miss Malevsky.
No, I'm Cathy Hinckley. I'm also a parent of, I'm the parent of Morgan at David Lubin, and my daughter is also in Mr. Guinan Blaney's class, and I'm here tonight just to advocate for my daughter. She's 7. After many days of observation, personal observation by myself and my husband, we observed students having a hard time understanding Mr. Guinan Blaney's instructions, and there is a severe lack of classroom management. Other teachers have come into his classroom to ask the students to be quiet because the classes are being disturbed in the other pods. This is a stressful environment for the students. We've had multiple other concerns, including lack of rigor, terrible time management, meaning that Mr. Guinan Blaney sometimes forgets that there are other plans for the days like art class. There's test score inaccuracies, progress reports based on assumptions, parent-teacher meetings not aligning with report cards. Our daughter has been excluded from instruction. Students have been coming and going from the classroom without Mr. Guinan Blaney taking notice, students being left unattended in the classroom, and then the list just goes on. So my husband and I have had multiple conversations and emails with Principal Dixon about all of these issues and more, and feel there has not been substantial change, and most of our recent emails to Principal Dixon go unanswered. We submitted a formal complaint on October 22nd, and was acknowledged by Principal Dixon on December 7th after the HR department assisted me with finally getting Principal Dixon to respond. But there has been no resolution to our concerns today, 87 days after filing this complaint. So What I really want is for my child to be placed in a different second grade classroom at David Lubin as promised by Principal Dixon back in early October before we filed our formal complaint. Principal Dixon has since rescinded his offer in retaliation to us speaking with other parents with similar concerns in Mr. Guinan Blaney's classroom. If she cannot be moved from this class, I would ask for a new teacher or to add another qualified teacher to the room to have a positive influence on all of the kids. Would you please help me in advocating for my daughter?
Ms. Hinckley, will you? Mr. Brown, will you stand up, please?
I know him.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hello, esteemed Sacramento City Unified School Board members of School Board of Education members. My name is Alexandra Norton, and my son has attended David Lubin since kindergarten and is currently in second grade with Mr. Guinan Blaney's class at David Lubin Elementary. David Lubin is designated as a STEAM school, STEAM standing for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. While the last 2 years have been full of positive learning experiences, I am concerned that Mr. Guinan Blaney's class is not being as well prepared as perhaps other classes, specifically second grade classes, in the STEAM curriculum, as well as other concerns that I didn't fully consider until I had experienced encounters with Mr. Guinan Blaney. One of my concerns is the subject matter that is taught in the class. Inappropriate subject matter such as the death sentence is broached. There is a known gap of children entering third grade, and this impacts their future teachers as well as their classmates because they have to then bring the second graders up to that now level. There is appropriate and inappropriate control of the class. The noise level and the focus is absent. There is psychological manipulation and underhand conditioning. Subsequent actions of my conferences with Principal Dixon on November 9th, 2018 and December 21st, 2018, both conferences following meetings with Mr. Guinan Blaney led to retaliation, and now my son came home with the trophy just last week for being respectful, responsive, and hardworking. In closing, esteemed members of the board, while our time at David Lubin has been one of great growth and development, as a concerned parent for this second grade class, prior classes, and future classes, the request is if Principal Dixon will not switch students out of the class and Mr. Guinan Blaney cannot be removed from the teaching duties, then I ask for a certified credential individual to assist in the class and ensure the students get what they deserve. Thank you.
Ms. Malevsky, Happy New Year.
Members of the board, those last statements seemed related, so I let them go first. Nicky Malevsky, first Vice President of the Sacramento City Teachers Association. Hopefully you have before you the executive summary of Fresno that was done by the Council of Great City Schools. I wanted to share this with you. Not only was their report far more positive about Fresno's special education and MTSS programs than they were about Sac City Unified. You may remember the scathing report we received. Fresno started out with much better ratios of special ed teachers, nurses, psychologists, and had far lower percentage of students identified for special education. Fresno identifies 10.6% of students with disabilities, and we are at an astounding 13.9%. The report goes on to say, and this part makes me want to cry, because moreover, the superintendent has a strong knowledge of and expertise in special education, and he is dedicated to leading changes in Fresno's students with disabilities. Immediately after the preliminary briefings of the council team, the superintendent and board took action to add 59.5 FTEs to the program in 18-19 at a cost of approximately $5 million. This included an extra 16 FTE for special education teachers, 24 for special education, 5 psychologists, more paraprofessionals, more speech and language, and more nurses. Our council's report was done in 2017. What did our district do? It hired another administrator in special ed. Every other staffing improvement and increase in services to the students, the teachers have had to fight for, either by contract enforcement or negotiations. The added program specialists, counselors, nurses, psychologists over the past few years, that was us, and it wasn't enough. One of the cornerstones of our contract agreement that you ratified in December was agreed upon goals for staffing, that teachers would look for savings in our healthcare, and that all of that money, any savings found in our healthcare, would go specifically to those supports for students. You ratified and agreed to these goals, Superintendent Aguilar. Elementary, K through 8, 24-1. Secondary, core classes, 28-1. Other subjects, 35-1. Special day class, elementary, 12-1. SDC, moderate to severe classes at elementary, 8-1. SDC secondary, 12-1. Nurses, 1 to 75, 750 students. Librarians at every secondary school, and on and on. These were the goals that we agreed to. And we agreed that every cent of any savings found in our healthcare would go to that. And it seems that ever since you signed that agreement, you've been trying to get out of it. SCT members are willing and dedicated to look for healthcare savings that will go directly to support the students as we agreed. But we will not allow the district to increase administration, pay out huge vacation buyouts, and continue the bureaucratic bloat. Our students deserve these services. And as to laying off teachers that your staff is telling principals is coming, trying to incite fear and stress for the hardworking teachers that face our students, classrooms full of students every day, your law firm's old trick of laying off teachers is not going to work. There's no economic crisis. All the other competent districts are hiring teachers right now. Elk Grove is hosting a hiring fair in the Bay Area, February 2nd. Wait until they find out all they have to do is pop up to Sacramento, I'm almost done, and they can pick up great teachers who we have already trained. We've already paid for them to complete their induction. Those teachers are not going to be sitting around waiting for August for you to finally admit that you really need them to meet your class size requirements. Those teachers will be gone, and they will never want to come back to a district that is fiscally mismanaged and lays off its teachers to fix it and does not honor its agreements. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, board member. My name is Hong Yu. I have 2 children in your districts. Basically, my topic is very straightforward. I just want to talk to you about next school year school calendar. I would like the school board to consider release the next school year calendar earlier. Now it's January, but I didn't know next year's school calendar. That's important for us as a parent to plan for summer, because I know a lot of students that, because they always thought the school start the same as this year. So, but it turns out it's probably not the truth. I know some students, they even missed the first day of school because they went to vacation or something. So as a parent, I do ask the school board to consider to release the school calendar earlier than possible November, December. So that's easier for us as a parent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sir,
Superintendent.
very
Mr.
quickly,
Hong?
wanted to respond that we do hope to have some communication going to our families on that topic around our academic calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, honorable members of Sacramento City Unified School Board members. My name is Mary Yang, and I'm the founder of Asian Association of North Sacramento and the president. I am here, the association consists of all Hmong, Mien, and Lao community. I am here with the Sacramento U-Mien Association Vice President Crystal Lee to formally invite each and every one of you to our first U-Mien Festival being hosted at the Harmon Johnson High School.
Good evening, honorable members of the Sacramento City Unified School Board members. My name is Crystal Lee, as Barry said, and I'm the vice president of the Sacramento U-Mien Association. And I want to let all of you know that Sacramento has the biggest concentration of U-Mien people outside of China, so about 15,000 of them. We have not had a festival here in about about a decade. So this festival is really something to look forward to for the community, and we really encourage all of you to come out and show some support for your students. We would have not been able to make this happen without the collaboration of the Union Student Club and the Hmong Student Club at Hiram Johnson High School. And so if you guys can come out, that'd be great. Yeah. And we'd also like to approach the board and just give you our flyers. Is that okay?
Yes. Could you give us also the date?
Yes, that is February 16th. It's a Saturday, and it's from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Hiram Johnson High School. Honorable members that we'll have there is the Daryl Steinberg, the mayor, and we'll also have Steve Lee, the mayor from Oak Grove.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Phyllis Stroop. I am a mother of 2 students with the Sacramento City Unified School District. My concern today is the provisions of parents on campus that is not able to be approved for a background check. This is from a personal experience. I was asked by the principal to complete a volunteer sheet. I was denied. I understand my background. The response I got was to come and discuss. When I requested to reschedule, I got, you know what your background is. We don't need to discuss it anymore. So what I would like, my email is on the card, is something in writing of what is parents' rights to be on campus, to monitor their student in class, to, what can we do to help our student in the school? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, school board members.
Good evening.
My name is Roz Myers, and I'm a parent within the Sacramento City Unified School District, and I live in the Meadowview area. I have a question. It is my understanding that the school district will be closing schools this summer. The question arose in my mind, what's going to happen to the feeding programs? We have a food desert. We live in a food desert. Our children depend on these meals for nutrition. Our children depend on these open, safe sites for engagement during the summer. So my question is, under current circumstances of a deficit, are you planning to close the school sites? What is the plan for relocating the food partnership programs? And how do we meaningfully engage our children over the summer? I don't want all of these children unengaged and into mischief.
I certainly understand that, Ms. Myers. Are you able to share with us where you've heard this information? Because up at the dais here, we're not aware that we're closing schools this summer.
Well, maybe you need a information program out there because parents are of that belief. There are a lot of parents that are very concerned. They know that there's a deficit and that there are things going on, and they feel that they have not been informed and that they are not aware of the district's current plans for the summer.
Fair comment. Thank you. Mr. Frank. Long time no
Evening,
see.
President, Vice President Wu O, and Superintendent Aguilera. My name is Frank DeYoung, Sam Brannan Middle School. I'm a grandparent with 2 children there. And I'm here tonight because it's not on the agenda, so this time I'm going to talk about it. I'm deeply concerned about the budget. I'm concerned at the fact that there's a really good chance that we could lose our local control. And I don't even want to tell you how bad that can be if we don't have local control of our schools. I wish SCTA would wake up and realize that. They seem to think somehow that might be a good thing. They refuse to come to the table, and I don't understand why when the other unions have. You're going to start losing employees because the fact that things are unsettled, they're not going to stay. They're going to go where they can get a job and they have confidence of what's going on. You're going to start losing parents because a district that becomes this much embattled with budget, they're going to move to Elk Grove, or they're going to pull their kids out and go to private schools where they don't have to worry about it, or Folsom where they're not having these issues. And because one union refuses to upgrade and sit down and have a discussion about their contract and try to hold the rest of the district hostage, which, by the way, I've been around and talking to some teachers, they don't agree with what this union is doing, but they're not going to come here and tell you that because they're afraid of what might happen to them if they do. So stand fast, do what's right, find what you can do legally to get around it, but do whatever you can. Because if you give in to them this time, they're going to be running the district and not the rest of us. They put the parents and the children out in front of them. They're the ones hurting the parents and the children. Not you, not me, not the other people. I guess that kind of covers it, doesn't it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dion.
Good evening, board members. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kenya Martinez. Welcome, board member Garcia, board member Malevsky. Did I say that correctly? Okay, good. I'm coming to you actually for three things. I didn't even know these parents were going to appear here tonight, but I actually attended a meeting at David Lubin, and I had the opportunity to meet with their principal, who was very disrespectful to me and another parent when we inquired as to why there wasn't a substitute teacher for an IEP meeting that we had to attend. So that's the first thing that I want to bring up. I would say it was also racial, but I'm just going to leave it at that. The other thing I wanted to bring up is something that is currently happening at the school that my son attends. I've talked about this before during the last board meeting, which is we have a principal, her name is Dr. Bolton, who has willfully and defiantly refused to let our RSP teacher push into special education, well, actually, push into classrooms for our special education students. These are students who have not received their special education minutes. Some students have failed. Some students have left the school. The principal has actually bullied some of the students out of the school. And so I would like the board, as well as the administration actually, and I know that there's an ongoing investigation, but like I told your ombudsperson when I talked to her, you are asking the abuser who's doing the abuse. So I'm just putting that out there. Then the other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I'm actually going to read about something that happened to my son. It's just going to take one more minute. So in September 2018, President Aguilar, you sent a letter to the district parents that they would be taking the PSAT prep course. So I was informed on October 5th that my son would not participate in the PSAT prep course. Well, actually, I wasn't informed, but that he was not accommodated in time. My son is visually impaired. He requires a 24-inch font in order for him to see and access his educational material. The ball was dropped on him. So I requested, or I am requesting right now, for him to take the PSAT again. The upcoming test is April 2019. In order for him to take that test, the school site, special education department, has to actually register him for the test by January 27th. So that's right around the corner. So I'm asking you with due diligence and to expedite, make sure this happens for my son. You say that you want equity and access for all students. Please make this right. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Hi, good evening. My name is Angel Garcia. I'm a parent of 4 children in the district. I'm also a member of the Coalition for Students with Disabilities. I wanted to introduce myself to the new board members, Leticia Garcia and Lisa Morowski, who I met a few months back. Happy New Year. I wasn't able to attend the last board meeting, so hello to all the board members and Happy New Year. I wanted to talk about the new application period for the high school specialty program. So unfortunately, I did not know, and I talked to other parents who also did not know, that the high school specialty program period closed December 20th. And parents cannot apply, kids cannot apply for any more high school specialty program periods. This is a drastic change from the last period, and so if you're a parent who didn't know, you're kind of out of luck at this point. And so I would say, in the spirit of equity, access, and social justice, a lot of our kids with disabilities have their IEPs in the springtime, or they're getting planned, right now. There's discussions happening right now. And so I think that giving folks a little bit more time to look what's out there, do school visits, look what serves their kids' needs is really important. And so this, to me, I consider myself fairly involved parent, and I did not really know about this new application period. And so I hope the board would consider that and seeing maybe to open the application period again for other parents, because I know I'm not the only other parent who missed that. There's another parent here who also missed that. So I look forward to working with the board, superintendent, and good to meet both of you.
We have one more public comment from Angie Sutherland.
Happy New Year, Ms. Sutherland.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Sutherland, and I wanted to alert you to a recent bill that passed as of January 1st. It's AB 2657, and that's on student restraint and seclusion in schools. And what it does is it allows a school to use the behavioral restraints or seclusion only if a pupil's behavior means that there's a clear and present danger of serious harm to the pupil or to others. And it does allow their use, it does not allow their use for coercion, discipline, convenience, or retaliation. The bill requires that schools report on this data annually to the Department of Ed. So this has always been one of my biggest fears. I've known of many situations of restraint and seclusion going wrong to where students suffer from trauma, they're injured seriously, or even death. And it can't be a go-to practice. I've seen it used when a child is disrupting class or refuses to do classwork. It's not the intention, but it snowballs. It has snowballed into where it becomes a situation of that. So as a parent of a child with autism, I've always been hoping that they would have legislation to require stricter requirements. And so I'm really happy about it because I know that positive approaches do work. My daughter suffered restraint and seclusion in 2nd grade, and in 3rd and 4th, she had some wonderful interventions with a wonderful special education teacher who used positive behavior supports. So I know it works, although my daughter still suffers today from the trauma from that. So board members, I would like to make sure that it's on your radar that the district is supposed to be training staff and alerting everyone to this requirement, and they should be filing the reports. When it happened to us, there were no reports. And so I urge you to please hold the district accountable for this so that they can provide training to all staff in positive behavior supports. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing AB 2657 to our attention. Are there any further public comments?
No other public comments.
Then we shall move on. Next on our agenda is item 8.1, Expanded Learning Summer Program, first trimester, first quarter results. Dr. Taylor. Dr. Edwards here.
Good evening, Vice President Wu, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. My name is Iris Taylor. I'm the Chief Academic Officer, and I'm joined tonight by Ed Eldridge, our Director of Strategy and Innovation, and Matt Turkey, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. And we're here tonight to share with you an update on our analysis and evaluation of the performance of students who participated in the Expanded Learning Summer Program, taking a look at their first trimester results. So we'd like to start off with just some of the highlights and the data that we're seeing. For our students in grades 1, 3, and 7 for ELA, we're seeing that these students, when we compare them to students who did not participate in ELSP, are outperforming by 1 to 2 percentage points than their peers. For our students in grade 3 for math and our students in grade 7, our third grade students are performing comparably, and our seventh grade students are the students who did not participate in ELSP are outperforming them by about 1%. So we're seeing some slight gains for our students who attended ELSP. So in tonight's presentation, we will share with you how we are engaging in this analysis of the impact of the ELSP program, and we'll also share with you the data, the type of data that we're looking at to determine if our students who participated in the program are retaining some of the skills learned in comparison to the students who did not. As a reminder, ELSP focused on our incoming first graders who received reading interventions and supports, our incoming third graders who also received reading interventions but also received math, and then our incoming seventh graders who participated in ELA and math interventions. We also had a component of our program for our students who are in 7th and 8th grade, an enrichment component focused on PSAT preparation and argumentative writing. And then finally, at the high school level, the focus was on credit recovery and gaining original credit enrichment for enhancing A through G completion and graduation.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Good afternoon, evening, members of the board, Superintendent Aguilar. Last spring, students were selected to participate in ELSP intervention based on unsatisfactory grades, in ELA and mathematics. In 2017-18, we reviewed the grade marks for students in grades kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 6th grade. And in elementary school, students can receive one of 4 different grades. A level 1 for minimally progressing to the standard, a 2 if they're approaching standard, a 3 if they consistently meet standards, and a 4 if they excel at standards. And of course, we also have the traditional secondary grade of A, B, C, D, and F. Students who received an unsatisfactory grade are those who received a 1 or a 2 in elementary school or a D or F in secondary school. In our analysis, we reviewed 2017 third trimester grades, and we compared those to 2018-19 first trimester and first quarter grades for all students who were targeted to participate in the ELSP and for who had data in both data sets. Given that ELSP intervention was provided in the LA for current first, third, and 7th grade students this past summer, our goal was to measure if the targeted students who received the treatment had a lower incidence of receiving unsatisfactory grades than those students who did not participate but had a similar academic profile. We performed a similar analysis for math for students currently in grades 3 and 7, as that's where the math intervention was provided. In order to protect student privacy, we did not provide an analysis or report for those students who had an NSIDE of less than 11, so we were modeling exactly how CD reports that data for student privacy purposes. So our analysis of unsatisfactory grades received by grade level shows mixed results. Regarding ELA performance for grades 1 and 3, there was an increase in the percent of students who received an unsatisfactory grade in both the treatment and comparison groups. However, students in the grade 1 treatment group outperformed students in the comparison group, as their 1% increase in unsatisfactory grades was less than a 3 percentage point increase. So when you look at the chart, in this case, because we're looking for reductions, the smaller the bar is the better, right? Because elementary students received multiple ELA and math grades within the grading period, there are more opportunities for students to receive an unsatisfactory grades. So if you look at the chart and you see, for example, grades 1 and 3, they have small percentages, but then you look at grade 7, in grades 1 and 3, those students can get up to 10 ELA grades in a particular period, and they can get up to 6 math grades. If they receive one unsatisfactory grade in those periods, then they are deemed as receiving an unsatisfactory grade. Whereas in secondary school, they have one ELA course, one math course per period, they get 1 grade per period. So that's why you see that order of magnitude in that difference. Results were more nuanced when disaggregated by ethnic and racial groups. In several of our student groups, it does not appear that there was an improvement as measured by the percent of students receiving an unsatisfactory grade. We did, however, note that Black or African American students in the treatment group for both ELA and math did appear to outperform their comparison groups. Also, we noticed that for our white students in the math group, they outperformed their comparison group by 10 percentage points. So you can see there we had a greater reduction in unsatisfactory grades for our white students in math, went from 39% to 29%. So beginning last year, you remember that we always strive to present the data for specific Asian races whereas possible while still protecting student privacy. Because of the small n sizes, we are only able to report on 2 particular groups for ELA and 2 groups for mathematics. And you'll see that we show that our Hmong and our other Asian students both benefited from participating in ELSP for ELA and math respectively. Looking at our student program data, you'll notice that we only have 2 showing here, even though we know we have special education, homeless, and foster youth. Again, this is an implication because of the small n size of those students with matched scores. Because we had less than 11 matched scores for special education, homeless, and foster youth in the treatment and comparison groups, we were not able to share this data publicly. So on this particular chart, you see the student programs for socioeconomic disadvantage and English learner. There were some limitations to our study. Typically, when we're doing an evaluation, we like to use multiple measures, and that's not something we like to do. Actually, it's recommended in educational research that it's good to look at more than one data point when making a decision about student progress, and also deciding if you're measuring what you think you're measuring. Typical measures for including in multiple measures are different assessments in the education arena. And so, for example, you see assessments in the LA, mathematics, and not just in the particular higher subject, but even in the domain levels, including our report card. Absent those particular assessments, we were restricted to looking at grades for this analysis, and that is why we selected those. And we are available for question and answers.
Do we have any public comments on this item?
No public comments?
We have a comment from Vice President Darrell Wu.
Thank you, President. Dr. Taylor. When you were making the introduction of the grade levels and you were referring to comparability between those who had entered into the expanded learning summer program and those that did not, the children who were primarily targeted or introduced to the early learning summer program were those who had been behind.
Correct.
So when you refer to comparability, do you mean that after the summer learning program, they have caught up? They're no longer behind?
So comparing those students who were identified to participate in the expanded learning summer program because of poor marks, and those who actually participated. So then their performance, comparing the two groups.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments from board members? Vice President Minnick.
I just wanted to clarify, so I understand from the last slide, those limitations of, without kind of the more kind of specific assessments that it's difficult to get a true sense of, how accurate this information. So I guess my question is kind of based solely on since we're basing this solely on grades, knowing that those are somewhat subjective because teachers assign grades and teachers are human, like how accurate can we feel this information is in terms of like the impact that the ELSP had? I'm skeptical just because of the lack of that other information. Any more detailed information?
So for the reasons that you named, it's difficult to say that it's accurate. We know that grades are determined by teachers, and what goes into making those decisions may vary from one teacher to the next teacher. And so that is a limitation of the study. We do have a standards-based report card, but even the factors of determining, like, did it meet standards or not meet standards, there's a lot of variation.
So, Dr. Taylor, I know that part of the beauty of this program was that it was an opt-out model. So we were identifying students who had a need of an intervention at a critical moment on their educational pathway and automatically enrolling them with the option to choose to not enroll. But the expectation was we were removing the barrier of a family being lucky enough to find their way into the program. And so I was grateful for that. I know that it did not allow us to capture 100% of students in each of those cohorts. But I also know that part of the way that the ELSP program was structured was a pre- and post-program assessment. And so what I think I'm hearing you say is that we had the pre-assessment and the post-assessment. We were able to, as a board, receive data on the post-assessment, which showed gains across groups, some at a greater level than others. But now, stacking that up against grades, it's difficult to measure the real impact of the student's progress.
Correct. It's like comparing apples to oranges.
So I appreciate the candor of that statement. I will tell you, and I know I've talked a lot about the fact that my daughter was an incoming third grader and struggling academically and went through the program. I think there are things that couldn't be measured, either by grades or by the assessments. The fact that my daughter went in feeling academically weak and having her confidence shaken as a result of a really difficult second grade year. She left her ELSP program saying that she was a scholar. She had a remarkable teacher who was very dedicated, and her confidence grew exponentially. Now, what I saw, and I don't know if you're measuring it at all, is that from her last report card in second grade, where her behavioral marks for the first time in her academic experience were less than what they had been before outstanding, right? They had dropped significantly. To the report card that we received post her experience with ELSP had gone to outstanding, had demonstrated leadership, had demonstrated her willingness to be an active learner. Are you measuring that at all for the students who have participated in the program alongside the gains in grade level readiness?
Currently, we are not, but that's a wonderful idea of looking at as a component of multiple measures. Something like that could definitely be factored in, but currently we are not.
So I would argue that's an extremely important component if you're doing a more holistic assessment, because a student's ability to learn is often contingent upon their feeling of worth and belonging in the classroom, and that they are in fact a learner. And so if that's not being measured at all by this data, I think it's an incomplete picture, and I would hope that you would go back and make that addition. I also also am really interested in the statement that you made about the fact that the cohort was so small for special education students that you couldn't measure it. So 11 there were, and let me, please correct me if I'm wrong. Did I hear you say that of the total student participants, only 11 were identified as special education students?
So in our analysis, we used a matching system. And so we were looking for students who had data in both the last reporting period in 2018, and the first reporting period from 2019. And those students, they had to be, not only they had to have matching data, and they had to have 11 students in the treatment group and 11 students in the comparison group. Otherwise, we ran the risk of two smaller groups in identifiable data. So what we're saying is, for special education, they did not have at least 11 students in both groups, and both would match scores based on the analysis.
So potentially there were fewer than 11 students?
Yes.
Okay, and that's not by grade level, that is across?
For the first, third, and seventh grade levels, yes.
So I find that astonishing, and you know, navigating the special education experience with my own daughter, she as a student with an IEP, receiving special education services, benefited greatly. And so I would really like to unpack that further. I know that based upon the feedback from the Community Advisory Committee about how we communicate with our special education parents, you know, we've changed practices to make sure that we're doing regular calls to invite our special education parents to participate in the Community Advisory Committee to more timely, in a more timely fashion, post information. How are we ensuring that that student population is reached when we're offering critical interventions like ELSP? Because I find that a remarkably low number.
Go ahead, and I'll share that.
Looks like we have.
If you don't mind me responding to that, Board President Ryan, also just wanting to know that there is a summer program for our students with disabilities, and the methodology and evaluation this is not inclusive of those students as well. These were just the students who participated in our expanded learning summer program. It doesn't include ESY, which is the extended school year program.
So how was a determination made that one program was a better fit over the other for our special education student population?
Yeah, so the extended school year is really driven by the IEP that calls for students to have a specific program. Whereas the ELSP program we were looking at that grade criteria as the indicator for overall. So there could potentially, you know, there are different variables that might go into why a student would be determined for ESY, extended school year, based on the goals in their IEP.
Okay. I'm interested in learning more about that, you know, as we try to empower our parents to be able to understand their options for their children as they're trying to help their children not only meet their grade level readiness, but also go into the incoming school year having experienced the interventions necessary for their success. I would very much ask you to go back and gather that data around behavior, as I think that that is a key additional indicator alongside academic gains.
And I would just say that research does show that there is a positive association. As students' performance increases, there is a positive association with that behavior mark. So that is grounded in research, which you're noticing there.
Thank you. Looks like we have a question from Board Member Morawski.
Thank you, President Ryan. Am I on? 2 minutes? Okay. Given the, when you disaggregate by ethnicity and race and by subgroups, it seems to look fairly mixed. So just wondering sort of what conclusions are safe for us to draw at this point from the data that we have so far, or is it kind of preliminary to say, given, you know, we only have a certain period of grade data and, you know, but basically what conclusions can we draw at this point?
So the data is, I would say, incomplete without more measures. It's not typical that you have an evaluation of a student program using a singular data point. And so even, for example, with the SBAC, when we report that information, we're just reporting a number. We're not putting it from the evaluator standpoint, saying this is a point in time. So you can look at this as a point in time measure, but it's not really enough data outside additional more measures to make some definitive statements, I would say.
So it's too soon to judge, sort of effectiveness would be your conclusion, or?
I would say it would be helpful to have some multiple additional measures to include in this data set.
Looks like we don't have any other board member comments or questions. I would say, I think a key distinction is we saw, based on the pre and post program, some positive effect on student achievement for students across subgroups. But what we're really looking for now is a correlation to long-term gains, because that will be key. Okay, thank you. We appreciate all of your efforts around this. Moving on to the next item, 8.2, the student assessment update.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. Again, I'm Iris Taylor, the Chief Academic Officer, and with me for this presentation is Matt Turkey, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. And we're here to just share with you an update on the status of student assessments within the district. In tonight's presentation, we will share with you just some of the driving governance that speaks to the importance for utilizing assessments for monitoring student progress and for informing teaching and learning. We'll also share with you the current reality of the assessments that are being administered within the system, and then our proposed additional assessments, and end with questions. When we look at our driving governments, there's driving governments coming from multiple parts of the system. At the local level within the district, we actually have board policy that speaks to the importance of monitoring student progress in evaluating student achievement, for making decisions about promotion and acceleration, and for student assessment. At the state level, curriculum frameworks in English language arts, mathematics, science, and history, grounded in the new standards, also speak very robustly, dedicating entire chapters to the importance of assessments. Additional guidance comes from the California Dyslexia Guidelines, as well as California's guidelines around a multi-tiered system of supports that speaks to the importance of multiple types of assessments, including universal screening, diagnostic, progress monitoring, for ensuring that students are making progress towards grade level standards. And then finally, not quite finally, but within Ed Code, when we look at our English learners, the legislation actually calls out the use of local assessments as well as English language development assessments for making decisions about English learner reclassification. And most recently, the federal government approved California's ESSA plan, and within that, there's regulatory guidance in terms of the use of Title I funding, calling for, again, the evaluation of programs using assessment information.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. So the graphic which you see before you is taken straight out of the ELA-ELD framework. And according to the ELA-ELD framework, assessment has really got two major purposes. One is to provide information about student learning, minute by minute, day by day, week by week, so that teachers can continuously adapt their instruction to meet students' needs and secure progress. And then the second purpose of assessment is to provide information on students' current levels of achievement after a period of learning has occurred. And you can see there's a continuum here, okay? And you've got the different levels of assessment. So the minute by minute, the daily, and the weekly is really at the classroom level, okay? The unit is really then at the department or grade level, so it should be common across the department and grade. The interims there, which are shown as quarterly, should be common across the entire district, and then the annual ones are common either across the entire state or even across the nation. The only assessments which we currently have at the district level, going across the entire district, are those large-scale summative assessments. What you see here in this table is all of the assessments we have at a district level across the entire system. So I'll talk you through it briefly, okay? So that first batch of assessments there is a CASP. So that's either the SBAC, which is English Language Arts and Math, or it's the Science, and then the alternative assessments for students who have that written within their IEPs. So that would be once a year for grades 3 through 8 and 11, and in the Science, grades 5, 8, and 12. The next batch of assessments are for our English learners, and there's the LPAC initial assessments. So those are for newcomers to the country within the first 30 days of enrollment, and that's a one-time deal, okay? And then you have the LPAC summative assessments, which would be for all English language learners across the system every single year. The PFT is the physical fitness testing in grades 5, 7, and 9. And then the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, is otherwise known as the nation's report card. And those are randomly selected schools and randomly selected students within those schools, of which we don't get the data. So if you just think basically just a sprinkling of students here and there, and that's it, okay? We then have our gate identification across the board in grades 1 and 3. And then we have our college preparation tests, so the PSATs in grades 8, 9, and 10, and the SAT, the actual SAT in grade 11, the IB and AP exams for mostly 11th and 12th graders, and then finally the California Seal of Biliteracy in grades 12. Now, as you go through all of this, what you can see is that we don't have many assessments, right? I mean, in most grades, you've pretty much got one assessment in ELA and math, and that's starting in 3rd grade, okay? Also then, look at the timing of the assessments. They're all in the spring, and then when we get the results of these assessments back, it's in the summer, which means that basically no stakeholders in terms of educators, parents, administrators, could actually see during the school year, how is my child doing on a benchmark on the same assessment which other kids across the entire district take. So can I compare my student with other students? As a teacher, can I compare my student with other students? And then what interventions can I make? We can't get that until the summer, and then, I'll be honest, you move on to a different teacher's classroom, right? There's also another big gap, which this shows as well, and that's for EL redesignation. For EL redesignation, students really need 2 things. You need to do well in the LPAC, so that's one, so all students get that, grades K through 12, no problem. The second is the students would also need to do well in an English Language Arts academic assessment, which is the same across the entire district. It has to be common. Now, the only areas where that happens is the SBAC in grades 3 through 8 and 11. Otherwise, we don't have anything. So if you're an EL student in a different grade, then you're out of luck for redesignation.
So to provide some context on our current state of assessments, in November 2016, the district entered into an MOU with the Sacramento City Teachers Association, which requires that the district and the union mutually agree to assessments for monitoring and student progress. The parties have been meeting for the past 2 years to seek mutual agreement on the assessments to be administered, the most recent meeting being as of Tuesday of this week. To share with you just some of the impact of the assessment, the current context of assessments within the system, this is a snapshot of a letter from the Office of Civil Rights regarding our agreement with them around the resolution of some disparities that we were identified as having in terms of gate identification. And what this really calls out is that within our initial agreement, our resolution, we had established an assessment process for gate identification. And within the 2 years following that, we were beginning to see some gains. What the letter points out is that since we have reduced the number of assessments within the system, we are seeing direction in the opposite area where the disproportionality, particularly within our African American students, is increasing as we are challenged with identifying students for gate. So here, as I'm not going to belabor this, but this is just a different view that shows for grades K through 12, when are assessments within the system? And you'll see this is a snapshot of SBAC and when they're occurring. One thing to note is that the assessment window opens in March, but it closes in May, and most of our assessments, schools assess in late April or May for SBAC. Then we add on our PSAT and our SAT administration, one time again at grades 8, 9, and 10, and one time in grade 11. So this really, it gives you a different view, grade by grade, of assessments within the system. We did some analysis and comparison of other districts, and so to see when is it that we are able to report on progress of our students and when other districts are able to report. And here you'll see in Sac City, we're able to report, first reporting for ELA and math is in December, and that's based on our trimester 1 report cards. Third grade. And then in March is the second reporting for our, based on trimester 2 report cards, and SBAC, again, only begins in March. We don't get that data back until June, July. So that's, a lagging indicator. And then our last reporting is in June. When we look at Lodi, Stockton, and Fresno, we see just a greater ability to monitor student progress across the system, beginning as early as the fall with assessments that are being administered. We've done some development of and thinking about what would we want this to look like in Sac City. And so what we're proposing, and this is just a snapshot of third grade, but our other grade level assessments look similar, is that similar to other districts, we do some analysis and assessing in September. So you'll see an ELA oral reading fluency assessment in September, and then that we have these interim assessments after curriculum units of study that we stop, pause, and assess. So you'll see in November for mathematics, after 4 units, we would stop, pause, and do some assessing for how students are performing in math. And then in December, again, after I think 3 to 4 units there, we would do an interim assessment for mathematics. That would follow again in February for ELA and in March for math. And then we would have some additional assessing at the end of the year. Just again, the ability to monitor student progress, to inform teaching and learning more frequently throughout the school year is what we're proposing. So with that, we'll take questions after public comment.
Do we have any public comment at this time?
Yes, we have a public comment from Angie Sutherland.
Good evening. I just wanted to say that I wholeheartedly support the need for more assessment to take place in our district. I know as a special ed parent, our kids are falling way behind, as you can tell by the data, the gaps in English language arts and graduation. And oftentimes we don't see a regular assessment process. We see the work that they've done, but we don't really know if the teacher knows really how they're doing. And it needs to be monitored. And I know that there's a barrier here, and I'm hoping that that can be solved, because we shouldn't be the the lowest performing district in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sutherland. We have a question from Board Member Garcia.
It's on. Am I on? Okay. So English learners, you have the LPAC, and then you have, I think it's teacher input, parent consult, and then SBAC, right? And we don't have an assessment for the grades that are not basically tested with the SBAC. Are we not redesignated students, the EL students, if we don't backfill for the SBAC?
So it becomes extremely challenging to find, because what you really need is a multiple,
Right.
a common measure, right? Because you need to see, in determining achievement, you need to see how those students are performing in that academic achievement area in relationship to their grade level peers. And so in the past, say, 2 years that we've had the agreement in place, we've kind of had to do kind of a rush to administer one assessment, but there's not like a common assessment across the board that allows us to inform redesignation. And it's one other data point. What we'd like to see is that our English learners have multiple chances throughout the school year to be able to show that they're able to redesignate.
And right now, that's not happening.
Correct.
Thank you.
Board Member Minnick.
Thank you, President Ryan. So a couple things. One, when I first heard about this letter from the Office of Civil Rights, I was pretty disturbed by it. But I kind of feel like they're doing us a bit of a service by helping us shine a light on this need, because I don't know if we're fully aware, at least maybe those up here, we're fully aware of the implications of how the gate testing and the consistency of that can impact the sheer numbers of students of different demographic groups and the negative impact it has if we're not testing all our kids. I did want to ask, and I think I know the answer to this, and you've chosen a few other districts that in their kind of schedule of assessments, and I was kind of curious overall where we stack up in terms of as it relates to across the state, in terms of our amount of assessment that we're giving overall, and if that's even available information, or if this is just all we could get. Like, what does that mean? I'll let you answer that first, and then I'll ask my other question.
So it's not data or information that's gathered at a state level. It's really a local decision on the assessments that are administered. We gathered this by reaching out to these districts and asking, what's the cycle of assessments within your system. Of course, we could do that more broadly, but it's not information that the state gathers across districts.
Have like an average of, like what typically the amount of assessments that are going on in districts compared to where we are.
Correct.
Okay.
But just in, different collaboratives that I have sat in and others have sat in, a 2 to 3 year type of interim cycle is pretty common.
Okay. And so then my other question, so I'm not a fan of tests, just in general. I mean, for myself or for anybody, to the point that I don't even give tests to my students at the college. But I do assessments every week, every 2 weeks, just to make sure everybody's on track and we're all moving forward together. So I guess my concern when we start talking about assessments, I get a little bit nervous because sometimes it means a lot of testing. I guess my question then is, when we look at kind of all these additional assessments, what does that look like? Are these more tests? Are these things that are incorporated in the curriculum that the kids don't even know they're being assessed? Like, because I feel like there's testing that gives anxiety to kids at all grades. And then there's, assessments that can happen and the students don't even realize that they're being kind of checked up on. So, and I know it's probably different for each category, but if I'd like maybe a little bit of understanding of what those additional assessments would look like kind of
in the classroom?
Yeah, so what we're looking at, and I put this graphic back up because this is from the state, that just speaks to the different types of assessments for different purposes. But what we're looking at is looking at our curriculum resources, right? The materials that teachers use on a regular basis. And within those resources, there are what are called interim or benchmark assessments, which assess the learning after, say, 2 to 3 curriculum units have taken place. And so it's not assessing something outside of the scope of what students have learned within a given period of time. And we think that's important, that they're not necessarily seeing content that they may not have already been introduced to. And so that's the type of assessments that we are seeking to administer.
And so then do our adopted curriculum that we have in these different areas include built-in assessments that we can utilize without creating something new or whatever?
Yes, the curriculum resource does include assessments, and that's what we're seeking to use. They include a multitude of assessments. So if you look at this range here, they include all of those, even an annual one. What we're seeking to do at the district level is that quarterly or that interim type of assessment. Okay. Teachers do things minute by minute, day by day, week by week. Many of them use the chapter assessments. And so we're looking for a common measure across the system.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Thanks.
Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Ryan. Dr. Taylor, can you remind me what the name of the assessment is that every student takes at the end of the year, and then we get the mail that comes in the summer that gives us the graph of where our students are?
Yes, it's SBAC or the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium.
It's changed over the years. I couldn't remember. Why isn't that on here? Is that?
It's the first set on this slide where it says
I see it,
California
okay.
Assessment of Student Performance.
So has it always been just grades 3 through 8 and 11? It has. It's not changed over the years?
That one hasn't.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry, can you go back to the one where you're proposing where they should be? Or where you would like to see them? And then where would the SBAC be on there?
So the SBAC here is falling in March, and that's when the assessment window opens. It opens in March and closes in May.
And then would parents get the notification before the end of school?
Normally they do not, because the data is not finalized. That all goes to the state, and then the state reports it back to us and finalizes it. Usually in July, August is when it's finalized.
How does that measure to other school districts?
So that assessment is statewide, and so across the state, everyone's getting their data around the same time.
And so everyone's getting their notification during the summer?
Yes.
Okay. I wish we could change that. I know as a parent, it always drove me crazy finding out that my kid was behind during the summer, and then they were behind going into a new grade. So
Yes.
thank you for clarifying that for me.
Dr. Taylor, I have a few comments and questions. So prior to SBAC becoming the standard testing mechanism for the state, STAR testing actually did capture second grade student performance, correct?
Correct.
So that is a critical point to make here, because I think one of the huge concerns that I've heard from the civil rights and advocacy community is that as we know that third grade readiness, third grade English language proficiency is a critical indicator for a variety of lifetime indicators of success, including whether or not a student is going to be on track eventually to graduate, right? When we've moved from a system that allowed us to establish interventions in second grade based on STAR assessment to a system where we're first assessing in third grade, there's a problem, right? Our ability to administer the appropriate interventions is arguably potentially too late, and for our most disadvantaged children. And that is gravely concerning to me. I do have a couple questions. You know, on slide 9, you talked about where we stack up as opposed to other districts in the region for assessment tests. And I think that that is illuminating. I would like to talk about this idea that we do, I know from speaking with teachers and visiting school sites, we do have assessment tests that are existing at individual school sites, but there is no common assessment occurring with regularity across school sites. Can you talk about why that's problematic? Because I know as we're trying to figure out how we make investments when we have limited resources and assessments are varying from site to site, it's difficult to get the data to be able to confidently say, here are the interventions that we should invest in.
Yes, and I would say from site to site, or even within a site, there may be variation in the assessments that are being used. It makes it, you can't compare that. You can't make any statements about how a student is performing in terms of their grade level readiness across the system, because there may have been different standards that were assessed, or the rigor that the standards were assessed may vary. And so there's no point of comparison. It's very subjective, and you just don't know. You don't know what is informing the analysis of whether or not a student has met grade level standards or not.
So I appreciate you saying that. I had a very troubling experience with my own daughter where in first grade, she had a teacher who was regularly assessing through almost weekly assessments and very short, low-stake tests, but tests that allowed her to target intervention and also to proactively communicate with me to support my child's success. And she first identified what she thought was potentially a learning disability and suggested that I might want to have my daughter tested for some special education services. In second grade, and I was dissuaded by others, so I didn't test her. In second grade, we did not have any assessment. And the first time I found out that my daughter was failing, literally failing to meet grade level, was in December with her report card. And I was told, you need to do something or your daughter might be retained. Now, can you imagine as a parent how it feels to hear that when you've already lost 3 critical months in the school year? And so I cannot drive this point home enough, absent the STAR testing, how critical it is that we figure out a way to regularly assess our students, particularly at these key learning points such as second grade. My final piece, and then we have a question from Lisa Morawski, is around the slide that you have on the OCR complaint. I'm very concerned. I remember being quite direct and unhappy with a B article that had been written a few years ago about the disparities that were existing in gate identification and placement, recognizing that children like my children were being left out. And we saw some gains as a result of changes that were made. And what you're saying is the Office of Civil Rights has said we've slid backwards, and it's in part due to the changes in our assessment practices.
Yes, that is the case. We were seeing upward trajectory movement across our different subgroups prior to the change, and they've noted that, and we're still under the review, and still will be reviewed in the upcoming year to see how our performance is for our gate identification and services.
So clearly there are equity implications, and
Huge.
That is gravely concerning to me. So thank you. Board Member Morawski.
Thank you. Dr. Taylor, could you walk us through how using standardized assessments actually improves student achievement? Because I think that's what we're all focused on, right, is the kind of the bottom line. And it may not be apparent, how that actually works, because there are, site-based assessments and so forth. So what does that flow chart look like?
Yes, and so the use of the standardized assessments or the common assessments across the system, really it's tied to, yes, the administration of the assessment, but more importantly to the use of the information that's received. What a common assessment will allow us to see is how students are performing in comparison to their peers across the system. So it takes us out of our fishbowl, so to speak, to see like how are students comparing to students across town, so to speak. It also provides us, when we can look at, say, the item level, we can get down into like on this particular item, these were the patterns of errors within a particular item. It really helps us then to inform, like, what should the instructional practice be then, given that there's this pattern of wrong answers on any particular item. So really, it's grounded in what is it that we do with the information that's critical. And then I would also speak to the quality. The quality of the assessments is vital. So we don't want to just give assessments to give assessments, but we want to give assessments that will provide good information that are aligned to the standards so that we can speak with some confidence about whether or not our students are progressing.
But if I may, just one last comment. I think early learning, as demonstrated by a lot of science and academic research on the subject, is critical. And the farther you go along in your academic career, the harder it is to make that up. So the fact that we, and correct me if I'm reading this wrong, we don't seem to have any sort of standardized assessment way to tell how a student is doing until they're going into 4th grade. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, that seems to me to be a big problem.
Thank you, Member Morawski. And thank you. I appreciate your presentation tonight, Dr. Taylor and Dr. Charkey.
Thank you.
Item 8.3, Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report.
Good evening, President Ryan, members of the board, and Superintendent Aguilar. I'd like to ask Alex Visaya and Brian Hill to come on up if you guys would like. And then before I turn it over to our chair of the BOC, which is Michael Watanabe, I want to just reiterate to the board that this is an annual report that we are required to do every year. It's always a year in arrears, so we're kind of reporting on some old data. And because of the board schedule, we got pushed out a few months trying to find a slot to do this. So I'm going to turn this over to Michael Watanabe.
Good evening.
Oh, I'm sorry, and Terrence Gladney here. I didn't see Terrence come in.
I introduced him. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Michael Watanabe. I'm chair of your Bond Oversight Committee this year. I am a parent of a 7th grader at Sutter Middle School. So as Cathy mentioned, Education Code requires the board to have a Bond Oversight Committee when you pass a bond measure under the rules of Proposition 39. As part of that, the Bond Oversight Committee has a couple of roles. The first is to review the annual independent performance audits of the bonds done by your independent auditor, and also your independent financial audits. The performance audit involves reviewing the expenditures and making sure they were expended in the way the voters intended. And then the second half is your financial audits. They review the accuracy of the district's financial statements, and they also review the district's internal control processes for those funds. This is the list of the members currently and past over the past fiscal year. We've had a few changes turnover, and then as Cathy mentioned, we have 3 members here today, Terrence, Brian, and Alex. Yeah. Statute requires you to have at least 7 board members, 1 member of a business organization, 1 member of a senior citizens organization, a parent member of the district, a taxpayer organization, and a parent active in a school's site council or PTA. So you do meet those requirements. On behalf of the Bond Oversight Committee, I'd like to thank the district staff that help us at every single meeting. We meet quarterly. They are very patient with us as we ask lots of questions in the meetings. They usually run a couple hours. Sometimes we ask questions that are outside of our purview, but they answer as much as they can for us. They're very good at keeping us informed about what's going on with all of the district's projects in the meetings. We get reports on status updates, basically every district project moving through the system right now. And they're very transparent with this, so we do appreciate that. As I mentioned, we do meet quarterly. Every meeting, we do review all your bond sales and project expenditures for the prior 3 months periods. Statute requires us to also take a look at the sites and actually visit them, not just do a paper review. We actually meet at the sites whenever possible. So over the course of last year, we've met at Kit Carson, Theodore Judah, your transportation yard, and your maintenance yards. Every meeting, your accounting department provides us a breakdown of where you're on bond sales, encumbrances, and expenditures to date. And they do that monthly. And our next meeting is going to be tentatively February 6th at your West Campus. So just a few pictures of some of the projects we've seen in the course of the year. Your projects of transportation services, Kit Carson, and your admin facilities there. The Theater Judah. I believe that's a brand new building, right? Yes. So on to the findings. Measure Q was a $346 million bond measure back in 2012. As Cathy mentioned, these reports are in arrears. So we're looking at expenditures and bond sales through June 30th of 2017. Not a lot of activity. Way back then, the district did issue $112 million in bonds. Your independent auditor found no audit findings, which is a good thing. And they found all your expenditures out of Measure Q were expended in accordance with the bond measures. The financial audits, performance audits, we do have on our website or on your website under the Bond Oversight Committee, so you can see the same reports that we saw. And Measure R, that was your $68 million bond measure. During the 16-17 fiscal year, you sold $10 million in new bonds. Again, independent auditor found no audit findings for that report, and all bond expenditures out of Measure R were in accordance with what the voters approved. So in summary, everything looks good for the 2017 review. Again, all of our agendas, board meeting minutes, all the financial performance audits are on the Bond Oversight Committee website. So with that, take any questions.
Mr. Barrios, do we have any public comments on this item?
We have one public comment from John Perryman.
No, I don't think he's here anymore, actually. Okay, no others? We'll take board member comments. Board Member Garcia.
Thank you. So have all of the bond revenue from measures Q and R, have they been spent?
No.
No? What are
Well,
some
you
of
could
those
probably speak better to that,
balances?
but I would say less than half, about half.
About half from each?
So Measure R is pretty much done, and what hasn't been sold is allocated to the central kitchen. And Measure Q, gosh, I should know that off the top of my head. If you add it all up, we're probably a little over half, but the vast majority of the money is allocated to projects that were outlined in the bond language. There's roughly maybe $50 million of unallocated, unsold, unallocated funding available for future projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board member questions? I do have one, Ms. Allen. I know that I was not on the board, nor were most of the board members at the dais when measures Q and R were passed. But I would be very interested in seeing again, particularly for the benefit of our new board members, at a trustee level, the allocations for the measures Q and R funding, particularly as we have some unallocated funding. And I know it was illuminating to me to see the disparities across some trustee areas in terms of investments that were made where others significantly seem to be underinvested in.
So we do usually in the springtime bring a report to the board as we prepare for a potential bond sale. So if that's good timing, we'll bring that information to you at that time.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
All
Allen.
right. I do want to thank the 3 members of our committee that did show up tonight to be here. Really appreciate it. They're very dedicated.
And thank you so much to all the committee members for your service on this. It's so nice to see you continuing to be longtime advocates for this work.
Thank you. Our senior member of our
Senior but young at heart. We're moving on to item 9.0, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Student preferential vote?
Yes on all open session items.
All those in favor?
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to item 10.0, communications. 10.1, employee organizational reports, SCTA.
Hello, good evening. My name is David Fisher, President of the Sacramento City Teachers Association and a parent in the district. Tonight, like teachers and parents throughout California and the country, we stand in solidarity with the striking teachers in Los Angeles. A little over a year ago, we too were on the verge of a strike over almost exactly the same issues that the LA teachers are now on strike. Rebalancing the budget to ensure that students had lower class sizes, more professional support staff, and also to fill the hundreds of vacancies that existed with fully credentialed teachers who reflected the diversity of the district. In contrast with the current leadership in LA, we believed at the time that the willingness of the district leadership to settle our contract without a strike reflected a true commitment to realize the hopes and dreams for our students embedded right in our contract. With this appointment, we've become to understand that the commitment secured in a signed written agreement from the leadership of the district was not apparently sincere. The district also has not followed through with its commitment to SCOE, first made in December 2017, when this board approved our contract. The district was told to make cuts in order to make sure that we could implement our mutual agreement. Not only did the district not make cuts, it actually went on a spending spree, adding administrators, new programs without additional funding, as well as spending, according to Dr. Quinto, at least $6 million on additional vacation payouts for top administrators, including $158,000 for one area superintendent. That's the equivalent of an annual salary of 3 beginning teachers in the district. To add insult to injury, the district leaders have now adopted a position in terms and that conditions secured in assigned written agreements, including those by the superintendent himself, are apparently optional. And rather than arbitrate our disagreements, which is required by our contract, the district is suing its own teachers. In addition, our shared commitment to lowering class sizes and improving services to students was also reflected in the contract that we mutually signed, where teachers in the district agreed that any potential savings to our changes in health plan would be used explicitly for one purpose: to lower class sizes and improve services to students, a commitment that we made together to the students. It was never intended to pay for dozens of new administrators, vacation payouts, or sharing data with UC Merced or any other projects other than the services for students. Looking at the budget, perhaps the most noticeable change over the past few years, aside from the increase in administration, is a big increase in special education spending, a development particularly noted in the FCMAT report. So with that in mind, we believe that by using the savings that we can create on the health plans, we can add additional resources that we've already negotiated to improve services. And these additions would allow us, for the first time, to implement a robust MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports that, appropriately resourced, could help reduce the cost of the special education going forward. This would make it much more likely that students are getting services that they need while having the added benefit of providing a more efficient allocation of the district budget.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
So I only got about a minute left. And just to let you know, so we have in our contract that employee organizational reports shall not exceed 15 minutes. I only got about 30 seconds left. Unfortunately, the district refuses to engage in the discussion. Instead, the district team, led by another highly paid outside attorney, refused to acknowledge that it will abide by the provision in our contract that would add those services for the students. That's not good conduct. It's further reinforced by publicity stunts like the empty chair fiasco that happened a couple board meetings ago, and the district's most recent refusal to provide a larger room to accommodate our bargaining team as a pretext to walk out of the meeting. Just a few short weeks ago, leaders from this board stated publicly also that the board would not approve a budget that includes cuts to the classroom. And yet, just as we warned our members when this budget fiasco first came to light in September, the district is now evidently threatening teacher layoffs in a heavy-handed effort to backtrack from the commitments this board made to students and teachers that unanimously voted for in December of 2017. In the fall of 2017, we demonstrated in a way that left no doubt that the teachers were prepared to stand up for their students, just like the LA teachers that are standing up for their students today. I feel it's my responsibility to notify you as a board that as united as Sac City teachers were in 2017, we're even more united and more committed to stand up today for what students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. SEIU. TCS, Teamsters, UPE. Item 10.2, the District Parent Advisory Committees, Community Advisory Committee,
Hello, members of the board. I'm just going to introduce myself as well as the other board members, executive members. They're not here tonight. First, my name is Kenya Martinez, and I'm the chair for the Community Advisory Committee. Our vice president is Renee Webster Hawkins. Our treasurer is Rose McAlfee. Our our secretary is Sarah Williams Kingsley. Our parliamentarian is Al Santana. The members at large are Tiara Phillips and Sarah Inman. And just a general statement from the Community Advisory Committee. Moving forward in the new year, we hope to build a lasting relationship that will be in the best interest of students with disabilities here at Sacramento City Unified School District.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, and we deeply appreciate your service. The District English Learner Advisory Committee. The Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Committee. Good evening, Frank.
Evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilera, board members. My name is Frank DeYoung, and I'm representing the LCAP committee this evening. And we had a meeting on December 17th where we got an update on the FIC and what is going on with that and what their findings were. We also had an overview of the California School Dashboard for fall 2018. And we also got a presentation on the Early Identification and Innovation System and what's going to be going on with that. We had a lot of comments about that. I'll share a few with you. They're online. I believe that they're out there, and you can see the minutes from our meeting with the comments. And the ones that kind of stood out was one comment made by the committee was that African American parents may need another approach to home visits, phone calls, etc. Some parents feel they're over-identified and picked on. Not all students identified as chronically absent receive the services because there's just not the capacity to get to all of them and help them and do what we need, which kind of speaks to assessments and everything else. If we don't have the people to get there, it's kind of hard to fix the problem. And then the other one we're concerned about that we asked is, what are the measurable outcomes and scaling of the program? How are we going to go about doing that? How are we going to measure those outcomes and do something with them? Those are just some of the ones that we had. I don't have time to share all of them with you. I'd be happy to sit down with any of you that would like to do that. We also asked about district priorities. The answers that we got were graduation, suspensions, and disproportionality, special ed, grade level readiness, and American African achievement. Those are what I believe that was, Vincent provided that information to us to let us know what those were the priorities that we're looking at. We're having a meeting on the 28th where CBO Dr. Quinto will be coming to do a budget presentation to us again. We're allotting, I believe, a whole hour for him to go over things, and the committee was asked to submit questions so he could get them in advance so he'd kind of know what we're looking for. So that's kind of where the committee is right now, and I thank you for the time.
And thank you for your time, Frank. Item 10.3, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President. Good evening to everyone. I want to start by sharing a saddening incident. I want to start this report by sharing with you a recent and unexpected loss of one of our esteemed colleagues here and friend, William Hendricks from our Technology Services Department. William passed away during our winter recess on the 27th, and so we came back to learn about his passing. And many of us remember William. He was the first person that answered phone calls when we had any issues related to technology. And certainly he was a very kind individual that made him very popular and respected in our district for nearly 20 years. He was in our boardroom not too long ago when he was selected as one of our classified champions for the 2018-19 school year. But far more than just one of our standout employees, he was a very decent human being, a loving husband to his wife, Cathy, and an incredible father to his young children, Anya and Corbett. The past few weeks without William have been very difficult for us. He was loved by all, and his passing has deeply impacted us. So we will keep his family in our thoughts, and they have asked that we share details of an event to celebrate his life. So I'd like to encourage all of us to celebrate William's life on February 9th from 1 to 4 p.m. at Mission Oaks Community Center, 4701 Gibbons Drive in Carmichael. A college fund has been set up for William's two children. If you'd like to contribute to the fund, please see our Chief Communications Officer, Alex Barrios. He has flyers for anyone who is interested. I would like to ask for a moment of silence to remember our friend and colleague, William Hendricks, and we will also close in his honor. Thank you. I also want to thank in advance all of our principals, our staff, our teachers who plan to participate in upcoming activities remembering and honoring Dr. Martin Luther King and his legacy. Certainly, let's continue to work toward his vision of a better world. In 1963, we all remember him saying that equality means dignity. I also want to remind our community that open enrollment period has started already, so please visit our website to receive important information needed to navigate the enrollment process. I saw Ken a few minutes ago, our director of the Enrollment Center. In our homepage, you will see information about kindergarten registration as well, and certainly want to encourage anyone who has a kinder student to consider Sac City Unified, where we would love the opportunity and would have the honor of serving your child. So please visit our website for that. Also a reminder, I was with my own children today getting these, but students who enroll in our district have to stay current with their immunization requirements. So please make sure that your child has all of the necessary shots. And you can visit our website as we do offer immunizations as well. Finally, very briefly, on a budget update, we're pleased to report that we have started negotiations with 4 of our partners, SEIU 1021, United Professional Educators, Teamsters Local 150, and Teamsters Classified Supervisors. I'd like to thank all of our labor partners as well, and make sure that everybody, as we follow the budget process that was just released, keep in mind that this year's proposal does not have any discretionary one-time funds, which we, I think, got used to in the previous administration. So we will continue to make efforts to have all of our labor partners engage in productive discussions about cost savings measures, focused on making sacrifices to address our budget challenges. Certainly, I encourage you to sign up to receive budget updates, and please visit our website to sign up for those. Thank you, President Ryan.
Thank you, Superintendent Aguilar. Item 10.4, President's Report. I would want to begin by, and that was very quick. 2 seconds in total next. I want to begin by encouraging our school site educators, parents, and students to participate both in the Women's March coming up on Saturday and in the MLK Day of Service, which will be on Monday. They're wonderful opportunities for us to instill in our children a sense of civic participation and honor the lives and legacy of both remarkable women leaders and Martin Luther King, who has been such a bedrock of the civil rights movement. Beyond that, I do just want to say that as we continue to do the difficult work of trying to figure out a path towards fiscal solvency, we are utmost committed to not only finding a way to reach solvency today, but making good decisions that will ensure that in years and decades to come, we are meeting the needs of our students. I'm very encouraged by the fact that for the first time in many years, the majority of the board is consisted of people who have children in the schools currently. I think that's pretty remarkable. 3 of us with young children, 1 with a high school student, 1 with a recent graduate, and another that had a daughter who went through Sacramento City Unified School District. So yes, we have an urgent imperative to find a path forward to avoid receivership. But ultimately, the decisions that we make today will not just be on behalf of 40,000 plus students across Sacramento City Unified. They will be critical to the success of our own children. And so we are not looking for an easy route, but we are looking for the right route, one that will allow us both to be financially stable and realize an equity vision that puts students at the center of everything we do. And that remains our continued commitment to you. Item 10.5, our student board member report.
After a good break, students are happy to be back at school. Finals are just around the corner, and it's definitely a busy time of year as lots of juniors are focusing in on SAT prep as well. Most seniors' college apps are finished or very close to finished. Student Advisory Council is working with focus groups of students from high schools across the district, as well as starting to work with MLA and WLA to have them conduct focus groups as well. We have targeted 4 areas of interest for these focus groups based on the results of our surveys, and they are racial discrimination, gender discrimination, dress code, and sleep deprivation. We will be looking to these focus groups to help us identify which of these areas Student Advisory Council wants to use for our initiative, as well as using these focus groups for suggestions for our LCAP recommendation and potential policy solutions. I'm also starting to make an orientation packet for new student board members or SAC members because tonight I counted at least 33 acronyms that were not on my original list of basic acronyms like LCAP that I will be adding to my translation. So making our meetings a bit more accessible, not just to students, but to members of the community who maybe don't have the same policy background that a lot of us do, is definitely something that's important and something that we should be doing to make sure that we're getting proper community and student engagement.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Student Board Member Halbo. As always, you have such good insights and additions to our work. Item 10.6, information sharing by board members. Do we have any board members with information that they wish to share this evening? We have none. Item 10.7, board committee reports. Do we have any board committee reports? We have a first from facilities, followed by governance, followed by fiscal transparency and accountability.
The Facilities Committee will be meeting for the first time this year on January 30th at noon at the Facilities Department. I hope to see you all there.
Thank you, Board Member Pritchett. Yes, the 2 others that are allowed by Brown Act and assigned to the committee. Vice President Minnick.
Thank you. We had our first meeting of the governance committee with members Garcia, Morawski, and Halbo, and myself. Just a quick overview, we kind of did some foundation building, kind of talked a little bit about what we all hope to get from the process and what we wanted to this committee to focus on, including the importance of student voice. And so I was thankful that member Halbo was an active participant in this committee. We also, we're looking at our current board meeting structure, and how it's changed over the last year, and where it still needs to go to make sure that we're efficient and transparent, and then also accessible, as Member Halbo just mentioned, worrying about, making sure we don't overwhelm everyone with acronyms. And so, we're going to be spending some time really looking at how we can be a better board, and also how we can make sure that folks in the public that are part of our larger community can be a part of that. Next month, we're going to be focusing on developing a committee purpose statement that we can bring back to the board for approval. If folks want to come out to the governance committee, we will be meeting on the second Wednesday of each month from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So it's kind of after hours when students and families can make it. I especially want to encourage students to participate in this committee, as as we look at how to make things more accessible. That voice is going to be really important. Not that your voice isn't enough, Member Halbo, but the more the merrier. And those meetings will be going on here at the Cerna Center. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Minnick. Board Member Morowski.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to announce the Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Committee. We haven't met yet. We will be meeting every second Thursday as our regular meeting day at 6 p.m. in the Cerna Center, unless otherwise noted. We were thinking it may be important to have some of the committee meetings out at school sites. It is additional, work for the staff to make that happen. So I'd love to hear from community members if you think that would be an important thing to do. The first meeting will focus on not only our mission statement, but on budget transparency. And I would encourage any community member who has ideas or has a lack of clarity, or wants to express to us, a way to make things more understandable, to come or send ideas. I've already heard from Making Sense work about issues of fiscal transparency. So please feel free to come and share, and hope to really have engagement from the community in this committee, because I think we'll make better decisions that way. Thank you.
Board Member Morowski, can you please share the time of the meetings?
6 p.m.
Wonderful, thank you.
to 7:30.
Great, thank you, Board Member Morowski. Item 11.0, Business and Financial Information Reports. 11.1, Business and Financial Information, receive information on enrollment and attendance. And I believe we have a public comment.
We have
from
public comment
Cecile
from Cecile
Nunley.
Nunley.
I know. Good evening, board. Good evening, board members. Happy New Year, since I haven't been here since the first of the year. And I felt you were getting lonely and missing me, so I thought I'd come up. On the attendance report, of course, it's so important. It impacts the budget and what have you. But the biggest issue is not just that it impacts the budget, it impacts our students, because you're definitely not learning if you're not in the classroom. So that's one of those critical things. And in looking at the report, it always sticks out that there are going to be certain schools that are well below what the average is, and you can tell that they're already in trouble. There's a couple that are elementaries that are below 94%, which is pretty significant. And then, of course, you have the two high schools, Hiram Johnson and Luther Burbank, which are at least 1.5 percentage points to almost 2 percentage points below what the average or even the next closest high school is. So given that it's budget time, the governor just released his budget. Given that this is where we start the whole budget process, really, truly consider maybe reallocating some of those resources, because just to say every school site needs an attendance clerk or an extra this is not enough. Sometimes you need to really reallocate those resources to those schools that really, truly need it. So just thinking about that.
Thank you, Cecile. We appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Ms. Trujillo?
Good evening, members of the board and President Ryan. I think, I was trying to figure out, I said, there's so much to talk about it. And I think one of the key things is accountability. And I think with that report, because I think in this particular issue is the fact that some of the kids, like you were talking earlier, of the budget, the future projections, and what's going to happen. And I would definitely like to attend some of your meetings, but I didn't know what time it was and where it was going to be located. So I would like to know that information. I think one of the key things that I think they're talking about the budget and the Sacramento Bee, I know it doesn't pertain to anything of the issue at hand, but one of the things they were saying is special education was $39,000, and it's getting very expensive. One way is to do is outsourcing it. I think I always like to look at outside the box, because I think I even talked to the reporter and told her, I know everybody complains about special education. Well, if it is such a problem, source it out. Because I think just like the post office, I think when it first emerged and they were having all these issues, they were saying, how are we going to fix that problem? Do you think if we ever had Federal Express and Prime and all these different ways, do you think we would have one-day delivery if the post office still had it? No. So I think with special education, it's a perfect time to do it. Because at $39,000 that cost for guiding hands, it's ideal. Because guess what? At that point, it's a flat fee. And you won't have any of these recurring costs or anything like that. You work with that budget. Another thing is that I asked the reporter to do, and hopefully she'll do it, is the fact that she put the combination of charters, public schools, and non-public. I know they're investigating guiding hands, but I said as a parent, we have no choice where to take our kids. I know I'm constantly researching and finding different avenues and ways to do it, but I ask them, have you ever seen a public school close? No. A charter school has to jump all these hoops. And a non-public schools, sometimes I think they're in that guide because nobody else hires them, because they're meeting the expectation of the kids.
Thank you,
I'm
Grace.
sorry that I went over
No.
and I talked about different items, but I wanted just to clarify it,
We
especially
appreciate it.
relating to
And,
that.
and I did want to acknowledge the article in the Sacramento News and Review and the comments of advocates such as yourself and Angie Sutherland. I think that, you have been, along with Angel Garcia, a wonderful voice for special education change and reform. I did want to correct one thing in that article, though. There was a statement around the district's allowance of a push out of students. And I do want to reinstate, and I know that Angie and Angel are very aware of this. We fought really hard to do away with Appendix D. That for me was a non-negotiable. At the end of the day, I was very proud of finally seeing that corrected in the last contract, and one step in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I may.
Vice President Wu, followed by Member Morawski. It is to answer the question. Oh, Grace, you can come back. I think they both want to address their comments to you.
I didn't.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to clarify. You asked about the Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Committee. It will be the second Thursday of the month, will be our regular meeting time, 6 p.m. at the Cerna Center, unless otherwise noted.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't mention before, the second Thursday in February is Valentine's Day, so I look forward to seeing you all for, bring some chocolate hearts or something, but we'll wrap up by 7:30, so you'll have time to have dinner with your sweetheart.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
No.
No.
Apparently, Daryl Wu did not have a question for you.
This question is for actually, Mr. Quinto, Dr. Quinto or Superintendent, I note that when we do our budget, we're estimating current enrollment and then a slight decline in future enrollment by a couple hundred per year. And we're looking at numbers for enrollment purposes, and enrollment translates to ADA, translates into dollars for our school district. And the numbers around 38,500 thereabouts. I note in the suspension reports, and I've noticed this for several months now, that when we look at our cumulative enrollment, the number is 44,377. That's a difference of 6,000. And 6,000, and if per student this year, we're going to get $12,000 plus per student. 6,000 times 12,000, 6,000 students times $12,000 is a lot of money. And so one of those numbers is incorrect. I believe I was suggested that maybe the 44,000 number includes our independent charters, but in looking at these tables, we're looking at district-wide grades 7, 8. We're looking at district-wide K-6 and district-wide high school. None of the independent charters are listed in the school list. I haven't independently added up all the schools, but it's nevertheless my number is coming up to 44,369. So really close to the 44,377. So somewhere in there, there's a discrepancy in the numbers. I don't know whether or not it's going to have a direct impact on our budgeting, but just off the top of my head, that looks like a huge discrepancy, and maybe we can address that future board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we at 11.2? Because I believe we have also a public comment on this item from Ms. Nunley. So that was a nice segue, but you commented early.
Thank you.
I have no idea if this shows up or not. But one of the things, and as you well know, this is one that I feel is very, very important and critical for the board for everyone to address, because the numbers are always so stark. And it's gone up, of course, and it will go up every single month from now until the end of the school year. It's going up about 2% every month. Now, the last LCAP meeting, we had a very nice presentation from staff that said what some of the things that they were doing. One of the questions that we asked, however, was, okay, you're doing this, you're starting now from ground zero, which is great. We don't expect miracles, but what would be a measurable amount that you would expect it to start changing? If we're going up 2% every month, can we expect maybe we can slow it to 1.8, 1.7, 1.6, something? What can we expect? Because I think that's so critical. And as you see, the African American right now is at 11.6. The next highest is Latino at 3.69. So it's still 3 times the rate. And like I said, the last one, it was at 9%. And then, of course, the foster youth is the other one that is so critical. They're sitting at 20%, which is ridiculous. And if there is a way, and possibly I would recommend or ask if the board would possibly have staff maybe do a simple presentation on some of the things. Like I said, it was a great presentation that they did on the suspension, but to say what it is that they're doing and what can we expect. And then to Trustee Wu's point, he is so right. I totally forgot about that with the enrollment. Typically, a lot of districts start doing enrollment projections right about now, because your CBIDS is done. And if you can get those enrollment projections and actually present them to the board and the public, we start getting a good idea of where you're headed in the future.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you, Cecile. We appreciate that. Critical for our budget conversations. Board Member Minnick.
Yeah, I just this is actually a question maybe for President Ryan or Superintendent. I know this board, we've talked about board policies, change our suspension policies, and specifically around willful defiance. And I just wanted to, maybe if anyone has any sort of update on where that's at, or what the process is, if that's something that's going through the policy committee. I just want to make sure that we're aware that there is some forward movement, that we haven't just like forgotten about it until
Yeah.
Ms. Nunley comes up here.
So I'm happy to speak to it or have Board Member Vang. As you'll recall, a few months ago, I called for an end to our willful defiance policy beyond the state mandated K-3. The board was very amenable to beginning that conversation, which we did in the policy committee. The only reason we haven't moved to unilaterally implement is because of the African American Achievement Task Force. We feel like it's critical, given we have asked week in, week out for these community leaders to dedicate their time towards a set of recommendations, that they bring forward the final policy that will allow us to take that action. But I fully expect that to rise to the top of the interventions that we seek to take to impact the disproportionate impact on suspension, expulsion of African American male and females.
Cool, thanks. No, I appreciate that, because I just wanted to make sure that it was moving forward, and that seems like the appropriate process, so.
Thank you, Board Member Minnick. We are almost only 1 minute over 8:24. So future board meeting dates and location. Our next board meeting will be held on February 7th. We're actually re-adjourning to closed session. Superintendent Aguilar had asked that we adjourn in William Hendrick's memory, and I do want to underscore again his many contributions to the district and what a great loss his passing is. So we will be re-adjourning to closed session at this time.